be very clear. There is no rift in the Republican Party. Yes, there are some folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie who are quite skeptical of this. They are very much in the minority. What are we talking about here? Well, why don't we just talk the GOP on the U.S. military ousting Maduro? Ipsos, 65% support, 6% opposed. How about the Washington Post poll? 74% support, just 10% opposed. If you look among 2024 Trump supporters, we're talking about 80% support. The vast, vast majority of Republicans are with Donald Trump on this issue. Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene are very much in the minority. Very few Republicans are with him.
You say they're with him on this issue. Do you even need those words, this issue?
No, I don't need the words, this issue, because the bottom line is this. Donald Trump has had an iron grip on that Republican base for a long period of time, and it is the same iron grip that he had 6 months ago. I know every so often people are trying to say, oh, I spot these little rifts in the Republican base. Oh, you know, they're finally starting to break. They're starting to break from Donald Trump. It ain't happening, at least when it comes to the approval rating. Look at this. 84% 6 months ago, 85% now. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to know 85% and 84% are basically the same number. In fact, 85% is 1 point higher than 84%.
Show me.
Good morning, pineapples. As reported by CNN. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I am your host, Austin Petersen. Please clap. They finally said it. They actually said it. For years, we told you that they were coming for your property. We told you that they hated the suburbs. We told you that they despised the independent man, and they called us conspiracy theorists. They called us paranoid. Well, folks, I hope you're sitting down this morning because the new Czar of New York City just admitted the whole game. Owning a home is white supremacy. You heard me. Not burning a cross, not wearing a hood. Are you paying a mortgage? According to the ruling class, signing a deed is an act of racism. And their solution, of course, seize it. I have the audio, I have the receipts, and I have the face of the woman who wants to turn the American dream into a state-owned nightmare.
We should really look to what Brandon Johnson and as well as the Chicago Teachers Union is doing to really use the schools and the city as sites of resistance against a federal incursion. If you're comfortable in your coalition, you're not winning power. If ICE and the National Guard are coming to New York City, ICE is already here. If the National Guard is coming on January 1st, which we know they are, we really have to use our tenant associations and our parent-teacher associations and our public schools as like networks of defense in support of Zeran's agenda and in support of our neighbors.
Yeah, this is the lady who wants to seize your home. We'll get to her in just a minute. Today, we're going to war against the abolition of ownership. We're going deep on Cea Weaver. She's the new Tenant Protection Director in New York City, but she doesn't want to protect tenants. She wants to eliminate landlords. She says we need to impoverish the white middle class. She says property must be a collective good, which is just commie speak for the party owns it and you shut up. But it gets worse because while they're plotting to take your house from the top down, the media is gaslighting you about the people taking it from the bottom up. Squatters, right? The leftist media is running stories this week claiming that the squatter crisis is fake news. They say that it's exaggerated. And they say that you're hysterical for complaining about this. Really? They tell that to the people in New York who can't enter their own homes. Tell that to the people in California. Oh, wait, you can't tell them because in California, the police won't help you. So the free market has provided a solution to the squatters crisis that doesn't exist. We have a guy in San Francisco who is clearing out squatters with a samurai sword. I'm not making this up. So when the state creates anarchy, the citizens create order. So we're going to show you the samurai solution later in the hour. It's Wednesday. Tonight is fight night. We're teaching karate, Jefferson City, Parks and Rec. Sign up for a lesson from Sensei AP. If you want to go hands-on with me, Wednesday nights, 5:30 p.m., bring your kids, bring your wife. The kids' class is at 5:30. At 6:30 p.m. Central Time, I kid you not, I teach martial arts, karate class for the adults. 6:30 p.m. I swear you will walk out with you will leave my class with your legs all rubbery, and the next morning you'll know that you did something to actually better your life. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm Austin Petersen. What is this pinned message Brad is saying over in the chat, saying all phases of bonus content unlocked? Is he messing with me? I see a $1 donation from Quest. I don't get it. Can somebody fill me in? I have no idea. I have no idea. But first, after these discussions that I've just set up, we have a constitutional crisis on our hands. Or do we? 5 days ago, U.S. forces snatched Nicolas Maduro out of Venezuela. The left is crying. The right is cheering. But my guest in the B block is absolutely furious. Judge Andrew Napolitano is here at 8 a.m. He's not holding back. He says this wasn't a victory. He says that it was a lawless kidnapping. He says the president has become a king. Is he right? Does the Constitution die just because we got a bad guy? But then we're going to hear from the other side. Francisco Moran, a man from Argentina, a man who knows what socialism actually does to a continent. He says, spare me your legal nuances, gringo. The monster is gone. Or should have said that with a Hispanic accent. Holy crap. Marie gifted 50 subs? Oh, whoa, freaking A. What the hell? Marie, how do you solve a problem like Maria? We don't know. She's solving all our problems over here on the Wake Up America show. I do declare the Wake Up America show will be on for another 30 days. I dream of a place where all God's children can enjoy the bonus content today. Well, I can't wait. So the bonus content is this. Phase 1 is a mini documentary. You've unlocked it. Phase 2, we're going to play the Great Grift Off, a Liberty game show at the end of the show today where you win real prizes. That's phase 2. Phase 3 is I've got an incredible item from my history that I will do a show and tell for after that. So we've got a lot to go. We better get going. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Thank you, Marie. So we're going to hear from Francisco Moran today, his first time on the Wake Up America show at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. He's a man who knows what socialism does to a content. He says, you know, the monster is gone. It's going to be the debate of the year, right? Other than Greenland, which if I have time, I have a whole segment prepared for you on Greenland, but I don't know if I'm going to have time. So I'm going to try and squeeze it all in, right? So this is, I think, going to be the debate of the year, right? The snatching of Maduro, the Constitution versus reality, the law versus the outcome. And you are going to hear it right here on the Wake Up America show. This show is brought to you by Founding Flavors Coffee, because if you're going to fight the commies, you need to be awake, not woke. And by forlibertyshop.com, you can get the gear that triggers the Cea Weavers of the world. So check it out, forlibertyshop.com. Get some Founding Flavors Coffee and enjoy it with us, Ray Sistman. We'll be glad to have you here. Tater Salad says he's not wearing panties. Excuse me? I'm not wearing panties either. Buckle up, America. They want your house, they want your freedom, and they want you silenced. But today, we're going to get loud.
At $5 billion, we hope to be able to set up and staff the agency, but also build new housing across the state, as well as acquire distressed housing across the state. The mechanisms for acquiring distressed housing could look different on a building by building basis. In some cases, what happens is tenants form a tenant association, they have a scofflaw landlord or someone who's not making repairs, and they could pressure, using organizing tactics, they could pressure to the Social Housing Development Authority to take over their homes, to buy their homes. In other cases, you might happen through like a legal process. A couple days ago, one of the most notorious slumlords in the city, his name is Ob Shalom, he was arrested because he is treating his tenants so badly, hundreds of thousands of open code violations. In cases like that, where the city is actively pursuing already sort of litigation and enforcement mechanisms against the landlord, the SHDA is an option. We can say, hey, you are not maintaining this building, and we are the city of New York. We have an interest in making sure that housing is well maintained, and we're going to take this building away from you. Would you need a
All right, I want you to look around your living room right now. Look at the walls. Look at the floor. Maybe you spent all weekend fixing that floor. Maybe you spent 10 years saving for that down payment. Maybe you remember the exact moment when the bank handed you the keys. Stephanie and I, we've got a picture of us getting the keys to the home, right? And you thought, just like we did, this is mine. Nobody can take this from me except the bank. They don't pay. This is my castle, right? But I hate to be the one to tell you this, but there are people in power right now who look at your castle and they don't see a home. They see a crime scene. So we're going to cover this morning the insane appointment of Cea Weaver to be the new tenant protection czar of New York City. But today, we're going to go deeper on this one because it's not just one crazy woman with a Twitter account. This is about a coup, a slow motion coup happening underneath our very noses against the concept of private property in America. And the man leading it is the new mayor of New York City, Zoran Mamdani. I mean, you need to know who this man is. You need to study him. You need to understand him because he is the prototype. He is the model for the new ruling class socialist. And if we don't stop him in New York, he is coming to a city hall near you. So let's start with the facts, okay? Let's start with this whole white supremacy lie. Weaver said, private property, especially homeownership, is a weapon of white supremacy. See, she said it in 2019. She defended it in 2021. And now she runs the housing department.
I think the reality is that for centuries, we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good. And we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently. And it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
Yeah. So why does Zoran Mamdani agree with her, right? Who is this guy? The media paints him as a man of the people, a struggling house counselor who fought for the poor, or he's like a foreclosure fighter. I've seen him described as. But let's look at the oppressed background of Zoran Mamdani. Is he a coal miner's son? No. Is he a plumber who worked his way up? No. He is the son of Myra Nair, the world-famous film director, and Mahmoud Mamdani, the Columbia University professor. So he grew up in luxury. He grew up in the bubbles of Kampala, New York, Kampala, New York, and London. And he is what we would call a Brahmin leftist, a trust fund revolutionary. He has never worried about a mortgage payment in his life. He has never worried about making payroll. He comes from the elite of the elite and from the perch of absolute privilege. He looks down at you, the guy trying to buy a duplex in Queens, or the Quest Fanning trying to rent out a basement in Brooklyn, and he calls Quest Fanning the oppressor, right? This is the classic Marxist trick, right? The rich kids use the poor to attack the middle class. That is the game. Mamdani and Weaver don't want to hurt BlackRock. BlackRock can hire armies of lawyers. They want to hurt you, you're the petty rentier. That's their term for it, right? The small landlord, right? And you know why? Because you are uncontrollable. Because if you own your own land, you don't need the state. Now, let's look at Mamdani's record. Before he was mayor, he was in the state assembly. And what was his signature obsession? It wasn't fighting or fixing potholes. It wasn't fighting crime. It was a bill called Not on Our Dime. Now, on the surface, that bill was about attacking charities that supported Israel. And, you could debate foreign policy all day. It looks like Ray Sisman over there in the chat this morning is ready to fight about Israel, Ray. Okay. No matter how if you're a racist, man, burn the Jews in a concentration camp, or Holocaust never happened, or to all the way over to Joel Ledamore, like, let Israel do whatever you want. Just kidding, guys. Let's look at the mechanism that Zoran Mamdani used. He wanted the government to have the power to strip nonprofit status and seize assets based on political activity, right? He was testing the waters. So he was establishing this precedent that the state can reach into private organizations, take their money, and if they don't align with the party's foreign policy, they can destroy you, right? He's applying that same logic now to housing, right? He's a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and you shouldn't let the word Democratic fool you because they're not Democrats like JFK. They're not even Democrats like Bill Clinton, right? Their constitution, the DSA constitution, explicitly calls for the abolition of capitalism. They want to end the private ownership of major industries. And what is the biggest industry in America? Real estate, housing, your home. Right, Mamdani has pushed for something called social housing. It sounds so nice, social housing, like a social club. But let me read to you guys from the definition of this one here. So from the bills he supported, social housing is, quote, permanently off market, or listen to these words. Remember these words. You're going to hear them soon. This is how the enemy is rebranding themselves. It's called decommodified or democratically controlled. If you hear those three phrases, permanently off market, decommodified, or democratically controlled, it's time for you to put up them's fighting words, and it's time to put up your dukes. So decommodified, I think, is the key word here, because they've been testing all of these words out in focus groups, right? Write this down, memorize this word, because they are going to use it. Decommodifying housing means that it would be illegal to make money from it. I mean, if you can't make money from housing, you won't build it. You won't fix it. You won't paint it. And eventually you'll do what a lot of landlords would do, and that is abandon it. And that is exactly what they want. Just like with healthcare, they want to break the housing market. They want a crisis. They are engineering a collapse. Look at the 2019 rent laws, right? The HSTPA, Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act. Cea Weaver wrote this law. Mamdani cheered for it. And guess what it did? It made it effectively illegal to raise the rent enough to cover major renovations. So if a tenant trashes an apartment, or let's say like the roof caves in, and it costs you $50,000 to fix it, you used to be able to raise the rent a little bit to pay back that loan over 30 years, right? Reasonable. Basic economics. They banned it. So they capped the increase at something like $80. $80! So now you have 50,000 empty apartments in New York City, vacant. Why? Because, well, the owners did the math. If I fix it, I lose money. If I rent it, I lose money. So they lock the door and the lights go out. And what does Mamdani say? Does he say, oops, we broke the incentives? Does he say, maybe we regulated a little too hard? No. He says, look at these greedy landlords hoarding empty apartments. We must seize them. So look at this as like kind of a loop, okay? This is a loop. Step one, break the market with regulation. Step two, watch the chaos ensue. Step three, blame the owner for the chaos. Step four, seize the property to, quote, solve the chaos. That is anarcho-tyranny perfected. And Weaver, this Weaver chick, she is the enforcer. Let's talk about her background. She didn't come from out of nowhere. She was trained for this. She ran Housing Justice for All during the pandemic. So she was the general of the cancel rent movement. Here she is tweeting in August 21st of 2019. And she's saying here, private property, including and especially home ownership, you really put that in caps, boomerfied it, especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy masquerading as wealth building public policy. Private property is white supremacy. Home ownership is white supremacy. Could they be any more clear about their intentions for the rest of us, right? So she was the head of this cancel rent movement, not help people pay rent, right? Not even like welfare statism, right? Cancel it, make it zero, right? She encouraged tenants to go on rent strikes, even if they had the money, even if they were working. She told them, don't pay, bankrupt the landlord, right? See, she sees this small landlord, the guy with a 2-family house, as a class traitor. She actually said there is no such thing as a good landlord. If you rent out a room to a college student, say, in Weaver's world, you are a parasite. You are exploiting the worker, even though you are providing the roof, even though you pay the taxes on that property, even though you take all of the risk. And now she has the power of the state behind her. She has the inspectors, she has the fines, she has the courts. She's got the full power of the government behind her. Madani has set up what they're calling these rental ripoff hearings, right? That's what he calls them. It's kind of a show trial, right? They're going to drag landlords in front of the cameras, scream at them, humiliate them. And here's the crime that they're accused of. They're trying to charge market rates in a city with 10% inflation. Here's the darkest part about all of this. And this is in a dark scenario. This is the darkest place, right? This is the part that kind of like keeps me up at night, right? The white supremacy angle on this. Why do they insist on racializing it? Why can't they just say rich versus poor? You know why? Because rich versus poor, that is hard to sell, right? When a mayor is a millionaire's son, you can't make it about rich versus poor. They have to make it about race. By calling homeownership white supremacy, they're creating this moral license to steal, right? If I take your house because I want it, I'm a thief, right? But if I take your house because it is a weapon of racism, then I'm a hero. I'm a liberator, right? I'm doing the work, right? Do you see how evil that is? You see how evil this is? They are weaponizing the history of racism to justify their theft in the future. They don't want black people to own homes, because if a minority family buys a house and builds wealth and sends their kids to college, then gets them a good job, then they stop voting for socialists. Then they'll stop needing Cea Weavers or Zoran Mamdanis. So they have to keep everyone renting, everyone dependent, everyone living in a social housing pod, eating the bugs and thanking the mayor for the privilege, right? We've seen this movie before. We saw this in Cuba. We saw this in Venezuela. We saw this in the Soviet Union. They always start by attacking the landlord. The Soviet Union called it dekulakization. They always start by demonizing what they call the rentier. And they always end, with everyone starving and the party leaders living in mansions. Zoran Mamdani will always have a nice house. His parents will always have nice houses. Cea Weaver will probably have a nice dacha somewhere. But you get the pod. But I have a message for Mayor Mamdani and for Miss Weaver and for the entire Brahmin left. This is the United States of goddamn America. We are a nation of owners. We are a nation of yeoman farmers and shopkeepers and homeowners and humble coffee salesmen. This is in our DNA. It is in our Constitution, the Fifth Amendment. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. You can tweet all you want. You can hold your struggle sessions, but you are awakening a sleeping giant. The American middle class is slow to anger. We are busy. We are working. We are raising our kids. But when you come for our homes, when you tell us that our hard work is racism or white supremacy, you have crossed a line that you cannot uncross. The Trump administration is watching. The Justice Department is watching. And the people of New York, the Quest Fannings of the world, are watching as well. In 2026, in irony, the mother of Mayor Zoran Mamdani's new woke renters' rights honcho, the woman who's dubbed homeownership a weapon of white supremacy, right? The Cea Weaver chick. Her mom is a professor at a prestigious college and owns a beautiful Nashville home worth $1.6 million. Of course, her dacha. Celia Applegate, her daughter, Cea Weaver, is the director of Mondani's office to protect tenants. So she teaches German studies, ironically, at Vanderbilt University, and she owns a pricey classic craftsman home just south of the main strip in Nashville, Tennessee. Applegate bought the property with her partner, David Blackburn. Yes, they call them their partners. I'm so sick of hearing people call them their partners. Applegate bought the property with her partner in July of 2012 for $814,000 smackaroos. And real estate websites are now listing the pad's value at more than $1.6 million. The longtime tenants' right advocate also repeatedly railed against landlords, saying in 2024 that the city should, quote, seize private property if buildings are allowed to fall into disrepair and officials deem it necessary, right? They say there is no such thing as a good gentrifier. Only people who are actively working on projects to dismantle white supremacy and capitalism, and people who aren't. You get that? So if you're not working on projects to dismantle white supremacy and capitalism, then you're not a good gentrifier. And by the way, Nashville is one of the most, it might be the most gentrified city in the entire United States. Harmeet Dillon from the Department of Justice said yesterday, we will not tolerate discrimination. And make no mistake, friends, targeting a group of people and seizing their assets because of race or class, that is a clear violation of federal civil rights law. So Mayor Mondani, you might think you're a king in City Hall, but you're about to find out that the Constitution is above your pay grade, son. So keep talking, Cea. Keep tweeting. Every time you open your mouth, every time you call us racist for paying a mortgage, you create 10,000 new libertarians. You create 10,000 new conservatives. You are the best recruiting sergeant for freedom we have ever had. So thank you. Thank you for showing us who you are. Thank you for taking off the mask. Now we know they want the deed, they want the land, and they want you on your knees, or preferably dead. Let's get up off our knees. My answer is no. Get off my land and get out of my city. We're going to talk this morning about the squatter hunter. Don't go anywhere if you're just tuned into the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Petersen. How are things going over in the chat? Haven't been able to read it as much this morning. Hope everybody's doing well, like Booty Sweat, Relaxing McGroin. Relaxium, Dan Bongino's coming back. Are you going to leave me? We've got Ray Sisman over there, blaming the Jews. Joni Rankin, Mighty Megatron. Quest Fanning is here. Hope everybody's having a great morning. Drew Van Runkle. Welcome, Nomad Johnny. Welcome. And everybody say thank you to Marie if you got gifted a sub this morning. Thank you, Marie. You're a beautiful person, and we appreciate you very much. Hope that you have a happy new year. She gifted like 50 subs this morning, so everybody gets to enjoy the extra bonus content that we create on Friday nights and the bonus content that's all been unlocked this morning, courtesy of Marie. We are very grateful. I'm loving this story about this squatter hunter. I think I'll get right to the news here on this one. So, wait a minute. No. I think I'm going to wait for just a second. Sorry. Hold on. Keep myself on track here. I don't have a producer yet. Hammerlagger, what's up, bro? We're glad to have you here, brother. Look at you. You got a free sub there, Hammerlagger, just for logging into the show today, courtesy of Marie. We got a lot to talk about this morning. I've got two guests. We've got Judge Andrew Napolitano at 8 a.m. to talk about the snatching of Maduro. At 8:30 a.m., Francisco Moran is going to join us live on the Wake Up America show. He's going to take the opposite tack of Judge Napolitano, so we'll have both sides on the Venezuela story. That's going to be a great one. I've also got a segment ready for you here on Greenland, if we have enough time. But before we move on, I just want to remind you guys, if you haven't already, please do visit forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com. Relaxium says, absolutely not. He says, I don't get back with exes. He left me, LOL. I like Dan Bongino, but I don't want to lose my audience to him again. Although it will be good for Rumble's platform, I think. All right. So in the last segment, we showed you the theory, right? We talked about the intellectual rot, right? We showed you Cea Weaver and Mayor Mondani sitting in their ivory towers declaring that homeownership is white supremacy. That's the theory. But now I want to show you this policy in practice. I want to show you what happens when you tell a society that property rights are racist, or when you tell the police that protecting a home is oppression, right? You don't get utopia. You don't get social justice. You get the squatter wars. And folks, we are in a war. Make no mistake. If you own a home in a blue state right now, you are behind enemy lines, and the enemy is already inside the house. But before we get to the horror stories, and I've got some horror stories that are going to make your blood boil, I want to start with a cover-up because, while you're watching videos of strangers taking over people's living rooms, while you're watching homeowners get arrested for changing their own locks, the legacy press is trying to tell you that you are crazy. So I've got a headline from this week from the Baltimore Brew. Listen to this. Exaggerated reports about squatters favor landlord profits over tenant rights. Exaggerated. That is their word. They claim that this entire squatters crisis we are having all across the country is a drumbeat invented by Sinclair-aligned media. They say it is a conspiracy theory designed to help landlords make money. Oh no, not make money. We don't want landlords making money. Think about that. Imagine coming home from vacation. You put your key in the door, it doesn't turn. You knock and a stranger opens your door wearing your bathrobe, eating your food, and they hand you a fake lease that they printed off the internet. And when you call the police tell you to leave. They tell you it's a civil matter. And then you open the newspaper and a journalist tells you that your nightmare is exaggerated, that you are just a shill for big landlord. You're a rentier, right? Let's talk about big landlord for a second, because that is the other lie that they tell. They want you to think that this is about BlackRock. They want you to think that this is about billionaire corporations, but I have the data for you. I checked these numbers last night from Real Estate News. Do you know what the big institutional investors are doing right now? Are they fighting the squatters? No, they're leaving. So the big boys on the market, they are selling off their single family rentals. They are retreating from the market. So who is left holding the bag? You are. Small landlords, the mom and pop investors, the people who own 90% of the rental properties in this country, the teacher who bought a rental property for retirement, the contractor who fixed up a duplex to leave to his kids. You are the target because you can't afford a legal team, but you can't afford to wait 18 months for an eviction court. If you lose 1 year of rent, you lose everything, and they know it. The squatters know it. They have weaponized the bureaucracy against you. Now, let me give you an example from New York, right? This is where Cea Weaver's in charge, right? There was a couple in the Hudson Valley, bought a beautiful farmhouse, $1 million home. They hired a nanny, thought she was perfect, moved her into the guest house, and then she stopped working. She stopped paying, and she refused to leave. She invoked her tenant's rights, what they're calling it, and she lived there for months, invited her friends over, let her dog run wild, and the owners, the people who paid the mortgage, they were terrified. They had to avoid their own backyard because she was watching them. Or there was this another story I found last night about this Airbnb nightmare in Washington, D.C. A woman rents her home for a short stay. The guest stays for 30 days. In D.C., after 30 days, you are a tenant. You can't kick them out. Right? She stayed for 10 months. 10 months of living for free while the owner paid the utilities, paid the mortgage, and paid the taxes. That is theft. That is theft, plain and simple. It is the government pointing a gun at your head and forcing you to house a stranger. It is the Third Amendment. No soldier shall in times of peace be quartered in any house. Well, these aren't soldiers. These are grifters. But the principle is the same. The government is forcing you to quarter them. And this is the wake up part of the show, right? This is not happening everywhere. This is a choice. This is a policy choice made by blue states. Because if you look at the map, it's a tale of two civilizations. In New York, you go to jail if you change the locks. In Texas, in Florida, it is a very different story. So let's talk about what happened in Texas. They have this Senate bill 1333. So this is the model, right? This is kind of the red pill for property rights. It went into effect recently. And it changed the game completely. Before SB 1333, even in Texas, squatters could drag you to civil court. It took weeks, maybe months. But now, under the new law, squatting is not a civil dispute. It is a crime. So here's how it now works in the free state of Texas, and we should try and export this to a red state near you. You find a squatter, you file a sworn affidavit with the sheriff, you show your deed, and the sheriff doesn't tell you to get a lawyer. The sheriff goes to the house immediately, and he removes them. No court hearing, no jury trial. Just get out now. And if they damage your property, it's a felony. If they try to use a fake lease, it's a felony. That is what civilization looks like. Civilization is when the law protects the maker, not the taker. Right, Georgia just passed a similar bill, House Bill 1017, and guess what happened? Squatters started fleeing Georgia because rats and cockroaches run when you turn on the lights. But what if you don't live in Texas? What if you're stuck in California? What if you are in the Bay Area where the police have effectively surrendered, where the DA is on the side of the criminal? Well, Americans are innovative people. When the state fails, the market provides. And sometimes the market provides a ninja. I want to introduce you to a man named James Jacobs. He runs a company in the Bay Area called ASAP Squatter Removal. And business is booming. He has a 95% success rate, and he doesn't use lawyers. He doesn't use orders. He uses samurai swords. Take a listen.
A company in the Bay Area offering help with removing squatters from properties, and they're doing it by using swords. ASAP Squatter Removal's CEO says the company has a 95% success rate. Crown 4's Rob Nesbitt reports on how they do it.
It sounds like an intense way to remove a squatter. Go in with a samurai sword and scare the squatters out. But the CEO of the company offering this service says it's more complicated than that.
Diagonals to the side.
James Jacobs has been trained in martial arts for 15 years, showing me what's called a trainer blade. It would be illegal to have a real blade in public, but Jacobs started his company, ASAP Squatter Removal, to use real swords to clear squatters from properties. The CEO says surveillance is done first to pre-approve clients and make sure the squatters are illegally on a property. After that's established, a process called breach and clear is done.
Breaching is breaking into the property, and then clearing is actively going through the rooms and making sure there's no active threat.
According to Jacobs, lease agreements are signed between him and the property owners to allow his team to go in and remove squatters. And it's not just samurai swords used.
AR-15s, we have M590, shotguns.
He's been in the work of removing squatters for 7 years and says it's a completely legal process. I talked with Cron 4 legal analyst Stephen Clark, who says that might be the case, but that the tactics used to remove someone from a property could lead to a criminal liability.
The samurai sword is a deadly weapon, and if there was a confrontation with a tenant or someone overstaying on the property and that samurai sword was used to inflict injury, that could result in a criminal prosecution.
Clark recommends going through law enforcement and the court process required to remove someone from the property. Jacobs disagrees, saying he's well aware of the risks, which is why he takes precautions to avoid legal battles down the road.
I have a $1 million insurance policy. I have an in-house attorney. Heck, people make wrongful claims against my business all the time just to try and get money.
The cost of removing a squatter from your property using ASAP Squatter Removal starts at $10,000.
We love him. He's our guy. He's our guy. Jody says, this is fabulous. Real VT81, welcome to the Wake Up America show, says, we need him in Baltimore. Cecilia, totally true, says, this dude is living his childhood dream. And Booty Sweat says, this is the I Studied the Blade guy. Yes. He's me. He's me. God bless America. So listen to this quote from that I pulled from another article. This belongs in the Hall of Fame. He says, the average squatter has no melee experience. No melee experience. Oh. That is the funniest thing I've heard all year. But it's also the saddest, because think about where we are. Think about what that sentence means. We have regressed to the Middle Ages. We are back to feudalism. The King's Guard won't help you. So you have to hire a mercenary with a sword to defend your castle. It is awesome. It is badass, but it is also a sign of a collapsing society. When you need a samurai to do the job of a police officer, you are living in anarcho-tyranny. Does anybody remember the original samurai? They were hired by rich guys to enforce property rights because the daimyo or the shogun wouldn't enforce them. Mr. Osborne says, glad to see Habitat for Humanity grow in all 50 states to natural-born citizens, especially in red states. Organizations like that will help this crisis make a quicker turnaround. Yes. And thank you for your donations. Squat on my sword, bitches. Tenant issues in the neighborhood. I've dealt with this individual. Small world, says Quest Fanning. There we go. Yeah, so awesome, badass, but sad that we live in an anarcho-tyranny. So James Jacobs, this guy, he is a hero. He is doing what the government refuses to do. He says, I'd much rather make a squatter homeless than have a landlord lose property. Amen. That is moral clarity. That is the spirit of the frontier. So here's the choice, America. You have two paths. Path number one is New York, where Cea Weaver calls you a racist for owning a home, where the media gaslights you, where you're helpless. And then path number two is Texas, or the way of the samurai, where we recognize that property is sacred and we defend it with the law if possible, with the sword if necessary. I know which path I choose. I'm keeping my house, and I suggest you buy a sword just in case. Let them, if they have no sword, let them sell their robes and buy one. Ooh. Who gets that reference? So later on the show, we're pivoting from the war for your home to the war for the hemisphere. The Trump administration went into Venezuela, grabbed Nicolas Maduro. Was it a brilliant stroke of foreign policy or an illegal act of war? So we have some incredible guests today at 8 a.m. and 8:30 Central Time. Judge Andrew Napolitano says it's an impeachable offense. Francisco Moran says it's a liberation. I have my own opinion, but I'll always listen to both sides and let you think for yourself. So since we got 15 minutes, you guys want to talk about Greenland? Let's talk about Greenland. Okay, first of all, before we do, thank you to the 117 people watching us live on Rumble and elsewhere. I imagine we've got several people watching us over on X and some other platforms. If you're here this morning, let us know. Say hello. Trump 1 420 is over there on YouTube. Nice to see you, Trump 1. Just remember, we still have some free subs to give away. So if you log in to Rumble, if you're watching us somewhere else and you want to get a free sub to our channel, then head on over to rumble.com/AP4Liberty and join us here in the chat because you will get gifted a free sub. Maria 100 bought those for everybody earlier, and we're very grateful for. So, all right. So don't forget to visit forlibertyshop.com. That's the number, forlibertyshop.com. I am the owner, at least for now, of a beautiful merch website where we sell delicious founding flavors coffee. So head over to forlibertyshop.com and try our delicious coffee for when you buy your house in Greenland. You're going to need it. Donald Trump wants to buy an island. Now, I bet you if you turn on CNN right now, they're telling you that the president is about to launch D-Day in the Arctic Circle. The 82nd Airborne is parachuting in a nuke as we speak. Because the White House press secretary said that the military option is always on the table, and we just saw what happened in Venezuela. But here's what they're not telling you. So here's the actual news. Marco Rubio our Secretary of State told Congress yesterday, he said, we are not invading Greenland. We are thinking of buying Greenland. And let me tell you something. We should buy it. It is the most obvious, common sense, high IQ move that our country could make in the 21st century. But before I tell you why we need to buy it, I'm going to take you back in time. When a Republican administration saw another frozen wasteland, and the Democrats and the media saw a folly. So the year is 1867. The Civil War is over, and William Seward, the Secretary of State, has a crazy idea. He wants to buy a massive chunk of ice from the Russians. Does anybody remember a little state called Alaska? Yes. So do you know what the New York Tribune called it? They called it Seward's icebox, right? They called it Seward's folly. They called it Johnson's polar bear garden. They mocked him over this. They said, why are we spending $7.2 million on rocks and ice? So that was about 2 cents an acre. The critics said that this land was worthless. They said it was a distraction from domestic issues. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like the people telling you today that Greenland is just a vanity project for Trump? Well, let's look at the scoreboard here, because Seward paid $7.2 million. 30 years later, guess what they found? Gold. The Klondike. Billions of dollars in gold. Then came the oil, the North Slope, Prudhoe Bay. Then came the strategic air bases that let us win the Cold War. If we hadn't bought Alaska, if we had listened to the smart people in the media in 1867, the Soviet Union would have had a nuclear base on the North American continent. So when you hear them mocking Trump today, when you hear them sneering at Greenland, just remember Seward's folly, because the folly turned out to be the greatest real estate heist in human history. Now, fast forward to 2026. Why Greenland and why now? It's not about the ice. It's about what's under the ice, and it's about who controls the future. All right, the drive-bys, they think this is about ego. Oh, Trump wants to put a hotel on a glacier. Wrong. This is about China. Let me give you some numbers that will blow your mind, okay? Right now, China controls about 90% of the processing for rare earth minerals. So these are the minerals in your iPhone, in your F-35 fighter jet, in the battery of that electric car that the liberals want to force you to drive. So if China cuts us off tomorrow, our economy stops. Our military stops. All right, guess who has the largest the largest undeveloped deposits of rare earth minerals on the planet? So you already guessed. Yes, Greenland. Right? We're talking about reserves almost equal to the entire United States. Neodymium, dysprosium, terbium, 18% of the global supply is sitting right there just waiting for American engineers to dig it up. And it's not just minerals, it's the map. Right? Look at the map. Greenland sits right in the GI UK map. Greenland, Iceland, UK. So that is the choke point. If you control Greenland, you control the North Atlantic. You control who gets in. Right. And as the ice melts, and I know the climate alarmists love to talk about the melting ice, right? But here's the economic reality. New shipping lanes are opening up, right? The transpolar sea route, right? Ships from China to Europe are going to go right over the top of the world, and they're going to sail right past Greenland. So do we want the Chinese Communist Party building ports in our backyard? Do we want Russian nuclear icebreakers patrolling the coast of North America? Or do we want the stars and stripes flying over nuke? I think the answer is obvious. We need Greenland. And Rich Lowry from the National Review had a fantastic column in the New York Post yesterday. He said, he nailed it. He said, we do need Greenland, absolutely, but, and this is key, we don't need to take it. We don't need the Marines to storm the beaches. That's messy. That's European. We are Americans. We don't steal land. We buy it, right? We bought Louisiana from the French. We bought Florida from the Spanish. We bought Alaska from the Russians. We bought the Virgin Islands from, guess who? Denmark. We bought the Virgin Islands from Denmark in 1917. So don't tell me it's not for sale. Everything is for sale if the price is right. Now, the Danish prime minister is saying this is absurd. It's an insult. She's rallying Europeans to sign letters. And Rich Lowry says we should stop clapping back and start negotiating. He says she should be asking for a steak dinner at Mar-a-Lago. And he's right, because here's the deal we should offer them. We don't just give them a check for $100 million like Truman offered in 1946. We should offer them a partnership and say, Denmark, you are a small country. You can't afford to defend this massive island. You can't afford to develop these mines, but we can. We will make you rich. We will make the Greenlanders rich. We will give you free trade. We will give you defense guarantees. And in exchange, we take the deed. That is how we do it. Use private persuasion, like Lowry says. You don't threaten to bomb Copenhagen. You make them an offer they can't refuse financially. That's what we say. There we go. Because let's be honest, if we don't buy it, who's going to end up controlling it? China is already there. They call themselves a near Arctic state. I mean, Beijing is 3,000 miles away, but they're investing billions. They want the zinc. They want the iron. They want the uranium. So it's the choice. Seward's folly all over again. Right, the critics are laughing, the intellectuals, the Europeans are whining, but 50 years from now, when American factories are humming with Greenland's rare earths, when American ships are patrolling the Arctic trade routes, our grandchildren will look back and say, thank God that they made the deal. So don't invade, invest, buy the island, Mr. President, write the check, and let's turn the polar bear garden into the energy engine of American dominance for the next century. Who's with me? When we get back, Judge Andrew Napolitano says it's a war crime. Well, he says everything's a war crime. We'll talk to Judge Andrew Napolitano about the nabbing of Maduro, and then Francisco Moran from Argentina on the opposite tack when we get back. It's the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
Marjorie Taylor Greene went from QAnon, acolyte to MAGA exile. You don't need a detailed theory to explain the departing Congresswoman's journey. Pundits have offered elaborate explanations for the evolving views of Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Georgia Republican whose resignation from Congress takes effect today. But I don't think you need a detailed theory to explain this woman's journey from QAnon acolyte to MAGA exile. You just need to recognize one central fact about her. She actually believes things. Some of the things she's believed are absurd, but that's secondary. She has beliefs, and she's willing, not always, but more often than the average DC Paul, to put those beliefs ahead of other considerations. You could already catch a hint of this during Green's original 2020 Czar 20 congressional campaign. Back then, she attracted national attention for her past interest in QAnon, a tapestry of conspiracy theories in which President Donald Trump was supposedly secretly working with special counsel Robert Mueller to defeat a cabal of elite satanic pedophiles who consume children's blood. In those days, articles about Green frequently linked her to another Q-friendly figure, the Colorado congressional candidate Lauren Boebert, who entered the House at the same time as Green and eventually had a contentious falling out with her. Green was booted from the Freedom Caucus after she reportedly called Boebert a little bitch. But even in 2020, anyone paying close attention could have seen an important difference between the two candidates. Green had actually embraced the Q worldview, though she insisted that she had come to reject it. Boebert, asked about QAnon on the conspiracist show Steel Truth, had replied by saying she hoped that this is real, a statement delicately phrased to appeal to the Q-ish voting bloc without committing her to its worldview. Boebert was playing a cynical political game. Green, for better or for worse, was a believer. Not just a believer, a particular kind of believer. Most Americans don't spend their lives soaking up the dogmas of the two big parties' competing fan bases. To the extent that they pay attention to politics, they often adopt their views piecemeal, mixing opinions from the left and the right, and sometimes from strange folks on the fringes. So you might be, say, an affluent woman in an Atlanta suburb, founder of a CrossFit gym, who rarely reads the op-ed pages of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, but scrolls frequently through Facebook, absorbing rumors that the typical Times or Journal reader might regard as nuts. That was Green, part normie and part weird. Weird, in fact, because she was so normal. The most infamous idea Green expressed in her pre-congressional days came in 2018, when she wrote a Facebook post blaming that year's California wildfires on space lasers controlled by the Rothschild banking family. The Rothschilds play a starring role in many anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, so when Green's post resurfaced in 2021, many people concluded the Congresswoman was not merely loopy, but an anti-Semite. Green responded that she simply hadn't known that the Rothschilds are Jewish. Maybe she really didn't know, or maybe that was a lie. But if any congressperson could plausibly claim such naivete, it would be Green. This wasn't the Rothschild tale of someone who grew up surrounded by anti-Jewish folklore. It was the Rothschild tale of someone surrounded by folklore that had fallen out of its original context and floated like driftwood in a digital sea. Sometimes someone with that sort of background comes to Washington, gets acclimated, and drops those early influences like a striver carefully eliminating every trace of his hometown's accent. But Green didn't. She kept believing things, and that led to trouble with her party. Even during Donald Trump's first stint in the White House, you could see a simmering tension between two types of MAGA, the kind that was basically just pro-Trump and a wilder, woollier bundle of Trump-era currents on the populist right. One way to tell the difference, check whether someone's skepticism about the national security state disappears when the three-letter agencies pursue people not named Trump. Green was, along with Florida's Matt Gaetz, the most notable Republican from the second group to have made it to Congress. Their views did not always track with the party line, particularly when it came to foreign policy. Green once joined Democratic Representative Rashida Tlaib, a self-described socialist from Michigan, in signing a letter asking the government to drop the prosecution of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. And she did it the very same week she joined a Republican push to censure Tlaib for some comments about Israel. Despite those differences, the two MAGAs were largely united on the question of whether to support Donald Trump. But there was not, in principle, any reason why backbenchers making trouble for Republican congressional leaders wouldn't someday start making trouble for a Republican president too, especially as Trump grew less popular. And in 2025, Green, until then one of Trump's most loyal soldiers, started directly criticizing the White House. Trump insisted that this was because he refused to get behind Green's ambition to leap from the House to the Senate, and I wouldn't be surprised if that played a role in their split. But there was also that not-so-small matter of her beliefs. Both Green and Trump had talked about being anti-war, for example, but she actually believed what she was saying, and so she was put off when she realized Trump was governing as a hawk. This past weekend, she denounced Trump's Venezuela raid, calling it what many in MAGA thought they voted to end. There were differences on economic policy too, and above all, there was the question of the Epstein files. Remember, Green used to believe that Trump was waging a secret war against elite pedophiles. Jeffrey Epstein, the money man who died while awaiting trial on charges of sex trafficking minors, is widely seen, not merely by Q-types but by mainstream reporters and politicians, as the man at the center of a ruling-class pedophile ring. So when Trump proved reluctant to release the full files on the Epstein case, Green regarded it as a betrayal. Epstein was everything, she told the New York Times. After that, things went south quickly. Trump called his critic Marjorie Trader Green. Green started bringing her criticisms of the president to such non-conservative spots as 60 Minutes, Real Time, and that hotbed of liberal feminism, The View. That last stop surprised some people, but many of Green's criticisms of Republican leaders have had a somewhat feminist hue. She's a businesswoman born the year Free to Be, You and Me was released. She didn't experience the pre-feminist era and has never shown any signs of wanting to restore it. The conflict came to a head in November, when Green announced her pending retirement from Congress in a statement full of anger at the highest echelons of the corporate state. There is no plan to save the world or insane 4D chess game being played, she declared, a direct repudiation of the QAnon faith, which had instructed believers to trust Trump's hidden plan. Needless to say, the mere fact of having beliefs does not mean those beliefs are always good. Green took several positions I liked. I'm always glad when Washington's tiny anti-war faction gets more support. Often, she took positions I disliked. She introduced, and the House recently passed, an anti-trans bill so extreme that it would criminalize the provision of puberty blockers to transgender minors. I doubt that many people, even among her most fervent fans, agreed with everything Green said or did. She had the patchwork belief system of someone who thinks for herself. And if she didn't always think those beliefs through as thoroughly as she should have, well, that just magnified the effect. Green claims she doesn't have further political plans, and perhaps she doesn't, at least for now. But she hasn't stopped posting commentary. Lately, she's been issuing libertarian-flavored calls for a tax strike, and she'll surely seek ways to stay in the public eye. Maybe she'll be running a podcast, or maybe she'll be running for president. She doesn't just have beliefs. She likes to give them a platform, and I doubt she'll settle for heading back to Facebook.
Welcome back to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Petersen. Happy New Year. We're so grateful to have you here. It's nice to see a nice big audience for you for our show today, especially because this next segment is always a big treat. This next segment is very special to me. A lot of you probably know my history. You know I ran for president. You know I ran for Senate. But before all of that, before I was sitting in this chair, I was a young producer at the Fox Business Network. I was working for a show called Freedom Watch. This was back in the heady Tea Party days, before some of you, feels like some of you were even born. The man I worked for, the man who taught me how to read the Constitution, the man who taught me that liberty isn't just a bumper sticker, it is a way of life, is sitting right here on the screen. He's the youngest life-tenured Superior Court justice or judge in the history of New Jersey, the author of 9 freaking books on the Constitution. He is the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, which if you aren't subscribed to, you are wrong. And he is quite simply a godfather of the modern liberty movement. My former boss, a mentor, a man who is absolutely furious right now, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Austin, and thank you for the very generous, overly generous introduction. We did have wonderful times together, and I was thrilled to share what knowledge I had with a bright young man like you, as well as with your colleagues at the time.
Yes, Judge. And we're so grateful to have your point of view on this one, because it's important to hear both sides of every issue. And there are very, very few people who are making the argument, at least in the Republican Party, that you are making. There's Thomas Massie and now Marjorie Taylor Greene. I almost called her Trader Greene just because I've read that so much. But Marjorie Taylor Greene has left Congress, I think in part due to her departure from the president on issues like foreign policy, which we're going to get into right now. Tell us your reaction to Donald Trump snatching Maduro out of his bed at night.
Well, it was a criminal act in violation of United States federal law. It was a violation of the Constitution, which requires the consent of Congress to invade another country. It was a violation of the UN Charter. I would imagine a lot of your audience are not fans of the UN, but the UN Charter is a treaty written by the United States, ratified by the Senate, and under the Constitution, a treaty is in the same category as the Constitution. It's the highest law of the land, and it commands compliance by the U.S. The purpose of that treaty was to prevent exactly what happened from happening: a member state invading another member state without the moral and legal authority to do so. In terms of the indictment itself, it probably would flunk a first-year law school class on criminal procedure. He's accused of things which, even if he did, couldn't possibly be crimes. I can get to that if you want. It's grossly exaggerated and based upon the coming testimony of a federal prisoner who is going to be negotiating with the government for his own release if he can successfully testify against his former boss, President Maduro. 80 people were killed, about 45 of them murdered in their sleep in order to bring about this theft of two human beings. We'll see where it goes. The judge is a 92-year-old Orthodox Jew, but he has a reputation for not kowtowing to the government.
Judge, it's I would be remiss if I did not tell you that in my deepest, darkest heart of hearts, it's very hard for me to muster much sympathy for the rights of people who wish to cut off your and my heads, kill the libertarians first. The communists of the third world, for example, the assassination, you might say, of Che Guevara. It's really hard for me to look at someone like Augusto Pinochet and not say, well, throwing communists from helicopters did increase the GDP of the country. There was a direct correlation, you might say. In fact, it's kind of a libertarian meme, one frequently cited by the followers of Hans Hermann Hoppe, to that the commies from helicopters meme, if you will. I mean, you could probably at least understand how people who despise communism, international communism, and everything that they stand for, we libertarians, might support a raid such as this, at least morally, if not from a constitutional or legal perspective.
Well, no one can support this who believes that the Constitution means what it says. If Donald Trump can get away with this, what's he going to raid next, Chicago or Manhattan? I mean, this is a might makes right authoritarian machine that he has crafted. He took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. Did he not take that oath with an open heart? Was it a fraud or a subterfuge, or did he mean the words that came out of his mouth? Very, very dangerous for the president to trample the Constitution and for there to be no consequences to him.
Well, it's always a subterfuge, Judge. They're always liars because they're politicians. So I always assume that they're going to not uphold the Constitution. As a matter of fact, I hope that they don't uphold the 16th Amendment of the Constitution. Wouldn't you love it if a president refused to enforce the income tax? So, I mean, how can we really get our panties in a twist over watching a brutal communist dictator? I watched the videos of him rolling tank over his own citizens in his country. I mean, shall we shed a tear for this, or should we shed a tear for a constitution that I didn't sign, you didn't sign, this social contract? Shouldn't we do what's right regardless of what the law says?
Well, what's right is to follow the oath that the president took, and what's right is to follow the supreme law of the land and the treaties that we signed. If we go around the world searching for monsters to slay, a lesson that we apparently didn't learn in the Saddam Hussein escapade, they have a way of following you home. That is a very, very dangerous predicate for the United States to be involved in. We don't like the way you're running your country, so we're going to break into your bedroom in the middle of the night, break your wife's ribs, and extract you, and then assert phony charges against you. Look, the CIA is the biggest drug runners out of Latin America. Heads of state were forced to look the other way while the CIA did their dirty deeds. Here's an interesting question for you. Who was the head of the CIA when Manuel Noriega of Panama was looking the other way while the CIA was transporting drugs out of Panama? Do you know who that person was? George H.W. Bush, the same president who invaded Panama and had his former colleague arrested.
Judge, nobody hates drugs more than Donald Trump. I mean, he spent his whole career advocating against drugs. He's always been a drug warrior. So I believe that Trump wants to stop drugs from getting into the United States. I guess the CIA is the deep state, right? So in some ways they do what the president says, and in some ways they don't do what the president says. I guess the challenge for people like us is to determine how much of the policy that's happening, for example, like this raid in Venezuela, how much of it is the deep state doing what they want at their command versus Trump ordering it. And Trump seems to be loudly saying, I ordered it. This is me. He's taking full credit and responsibility for this. He wanted to accomplish this, and he did. It's kind of it's one thing to look at a policy that you have towards like Iraq or Afghanistan, but there is some truth to the Monroe Doctrine concept. We don't want foreign powers colonizing the Western Hemisphere for national security reasons. And I mean, there's plenty of libertarian arguments that you could say fighting communism, how you fight communism it's a dirty, dirty war. You said on this show you would abolish the CIA, but you would still have a spy service. So it's kind of like, how do we make sense of when it's right to follow the Constitution, which is, what you're saying, and then when it's definitely wrong to follow the Constitution, for example, the 16th Amendment. How do we sort of make that? How do we square that circle? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I don't think you can compare the 16th Amendment to what happened the other day. The problem with the 16th Amendment is it was ratified under fraudulent circumstances in which the president at the time, the pseudo-constitutional scholar, as I called him yesterday, in the White House, Woodrow Wilson, said the marginal tax rates would never exceed 3%. During World War I, they were up to 91%. Congress doesn't have to impose any taxes. The 16th Amendment doesn't require taxes. It authorizes Congress to tax income. So this is a positive decision of the Congress that I would vote against every year when they authorize funds for the IRS to use to extract assets from us. That is not an apt comparison to a president using the military to engage in an assault in violation of federal law, the Constitution, and international law. The Monroe Doctrine is a speech given by a president in the 1820s. It's not law, and it's wildly misunderstood to think that somehow it is a legal basis for a president to invade a country in Latin America. What is he trying to do? Colonize Venezuela? He says he's going to run it. My God, the government can't deliver the mail in the United States. How are they going to run Venezuela?
Well, some of these guys deserve death. I mean, they are literal narco-terrorists who run sex trafficking operations into the United States. I mean, even if you and I don't agree with the war on drugs and it's wrong, we shouldn't be prosecuting adults for using these dangerous chemicals that are coming from South America into the United States. You at least
wait a minute.
But
don't attribute to Venezuela everything that comes from Latin America.
I'm not.
Guess who the first defense witness will be? Tulsi Gabbard.
That could be true. The point is that
her analysis just 2 months ago or 5 months ago was that Venezuela is not a trafficker of drugs.
That's
there
fine.
There are serious problems that come out of Mexico.
Yes.
But none noticed by the intelligence community or the DEA that come out of Venezuela. The purpose of Venezuela was to allow Paul Singer and Trump's other rich friends to get their hands on oil.
I'll give you, even if I give you all of that, what I'm really trying to kind of understand, Judge, is suss out, and this is for my own understanding of this, is when it's right to follow the Constitution, because like the constitutional way, of course, declare war, have it approved by Congress, right? I don't think that that's a good way to fight sex trafficking narco-terrorists, even if they come from Mexico versus Venezuela. But
I don't know why you're saying sex trafficking.
Well,
We're
because
talking about an indictment of the head of state that has nothing whatsoever to do with sex trafficking.
Here's why. The reason I bring that up, Judge, is because you and I don't agree with the war on drugs. So therefore, we don't see the transaction of drugs as what should be a crime, even though it is a crime. But in the case of sex trafficking, when you're actually trafficking underage girls, that is something you and I both agree is a crime that should be interdicted and we should fight against with the full force of the law. So if these narco-terrorists who are conducting these massive international rings that involve drugs and sex trafficking, people come across borders, how should we, what letter of the law should we declare war on them? Or is it better to just black bag the heads of the terrorist organization and bring them to New York for trial? What's the superior way to fight those sex trafficking narco-terrorists?
Not prepared to discuss that. I'm not a law enforcement person. I'm just ready to discuss Venezuela, which has nothing to do with sex trafficking. Narco-terrorism is not a term of law. It's a political term coined by the Trump administration, so it doesn't have a legal definition. In the American system of law, we don't punish people before they're convicted, and we don't arrest them before they commit a crime, and we don't arrest them when they're not in the United States of America. So 2 of the crimes with which he's charged, he couldn't possibly have committed. One says he dispatched cocaine from Caracas to Paris. Well, even if true, that's not an American federal crime. The other says he possessed a machine gun in Caracas. Even if true, that's not an American federal crime. The courts don't have jurisdiction over what happens outside the United States. This is an example of the kind of nonsense that they have thrown at him. Now, I'll admit I have a soft spot in my heart for anybody who is a defendant, no matter how horrible their behavior may be, because I like to see the Bill of Rights followed. Because if we can go easy on the Bill of Rights because we hate the defendant, then the Bill of Rights is meaningless.
No, I'm so with you, Judge. My heart is with you. And I hope you'll forgive me. I'm struggling with these concepts of how the United States can have a lawful national defense and one that results in the smallest body count possible, right? The fewest amount of civilian casualties. Hell, Obama didn't care about civilian casualties when he bombed with impunity, but there's a difference between Obama and Trump's foreign policy, a very marked difference between them, even though you could make comparisons with like Gaddafi, which Hillary Clinton, he said he came, he saw, he died. But I guess I sort of look at the Middle East and China, the East, a little bit differently than what happens in the West, because what happens in the West does directly impact us, right? A lot of the trade and traffic that comes from South America and Mexico, makes its way north. So I'm confused on, especially because we live in an anarcho-tyranny, Judge. We live in a country now where there's one set of laws for the Zoran Mandanis and the Cea Weavers, right? For that, there's one set of laws for them, these wealthy Marxists. And then there's another set of rules for people like you and I, who are, political dissidents in this country to a great extent. And the average middle Americans who watch this show, right? They're the enemies of these people. So it's like we live under this anarcho-tyranny regime here in the United States. And yet communists overseas can operate with impunity, send things into our countries. So, you and I, we believe in free immigration, but clearly not everybody who's coming here is coming to do us well. And the Democrats don't care about that kind of stuff. So this anarcho-tyranny, it's hard for me to sort of, I guess, hold to the processes of the Constitution so tightly, noting that they don't really apply to people like you and I and to the rest of the country. Does that make sense?
Well, I understand your frustration, but I challenge anybody who thinks it is immoral or legal for the president to enforce the parts of the Constitution with which he agrees and not enforce the parts with which he disagrees. I know you don't view James Madison the same way I do, but he did insist that the word faithfully be put into the oath because he knew that there would be this totalitarian temptation, as it was later called, to enforce the laws with which you agree and not enforce those with which you disagree. At least the word faithfully requires the new president to state publicly that he'll enforce all the laws, whether he agrees with them or not. This particular president has manifested a willingness to overlook that to a greater extent than anybody else. You can't justify Obama's murdering of Alaki and his son. You can't justify Trump's murdering of General Soleimani. You can't justify much of what George W. Bush did. You can't justify any of the torture of the Bush Cheney regime. But they did all that stuff and they got away with it. And now their modern day predecessor claims that because they got away with it, it is somehow, by some perverse way, never recognized by the courts, never articulated in positive law, a precedent that justifies it. I don't accept that. I realize I'm harshly in the minority, apparently even in the minority on this show.
No, Judge. I'm trying to figure these things out because it just seems when you look at the way the world operates in reality, there's one set of rules for one group of people, and there's another set of rules for the rest of us. And, when you look at historical examples like Noriega, or you look at what Augusto Pinochet did in Chile, right? When your back is to the wall and the communists have their knives to their throats, and they certainly have their knives to our throats, Judge, in every sense of the world, metaphorically and literally, that there have to be some tools for the good guys, for people like us, that can be used to fight back against these violent, radical terrorist communists, because the Che Guevaras of the world who declare nuclear war against us and things like that, they are the opposite of libertarians. They are the enemies of liberty on every front. We have to have some tools, I guess, to fight against them. But listen, Judge, I want to talk about your show, Judging Freedom, which you are in the majority because you've got the millions and millions of views. So tell me about who you have coming up on Judging Freedom and what you guys will be discussing.
Well, we had 100 million views in 2025 for the second year in a row. So I'm very fortunate to have people like Colonel Douglas McGregor on the show, who's on with me in a couple of hours. We will be discussing not only Venezuela, but also this absurd nonsense that came out of Europe yesterday, where the coalition of the willing, that was every EU country except for Hungary, said we will send troops to Ukraine as a security force in a post-war Ukraine. This is insane if they think the Russians will agree to European troops in Ukraine. And if the two real estate agents that represent the United States, Trump's former partner and his son-in-law.
Judge, you cut out. Are you there? We might have lost him. Darn. That's always frustrating. All right. Well, thank you, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Sorry we lost you there. Well, guys, I wasn't really able to monitor the chat. Like, that was, I think, a pretty lively discussion, wouldn't you say? I mean, you got to understand, it takes a lot of courage for me to sort of debate like that with my old boss. He doesn't like to kind of tangle too much with me, but I'm just working a lot of these things out of my head. I don't know everything, right? But I'm asking these difficult questions to the judge because I'm trying to learn. And I see Joni Rankin, she agreed with the judge, but I couldn't tell, was anyone agreeing with me? Were you guys sort of understand what I was saying? Did it feel like it was coming out of nowhere, what I'm saying? Am I taking crazy pills? I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. We have got another guest coming up, and I just don't want to miss him. Francisco Moran. I'm going to go to a commercial break, guys. I'm sorry. I would normally play the bonus content, but it's like 8 minutes long today, and I don't have that much time. The other side of the Venezuela argument now from a man from Argentina. We'll be right back. It's the Wake Up America show. You're watching the 4 Liberty Network.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways?
Welcome back to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Petersen. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this morning. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Judge Andrew Napolitano. What did you think? Well, and we're about to have our next guest here on the show in just a moment. His name is Francisco Moran. I mean, you just heard from Judge Napolitano. And if you care about the Constitution, he probably scared the hell out of you. He says that the raid on Venezuela was a lawless kidnapping. He called it an act of war without Congress. And legally, he may be right. But I promise you the other side. I promised you the realist perspective, because it is very easy for us to sit here in my air-conditioned studio here in the United States and debate Article 1, Section 8, while millions of people in South America are starving, while Venezuelan gangs are flooding our borders, while China and Iran are setting up missile bases in our backyard. My next guest says, spare me the lecture, gringo. The monster is gone. He is a dual qualified attorney in New York and Buenos Aires. He is a leader in the new right movement that is sweeping Latin America. The founder of Carlos Menem, a group dedicated to bringing economic sanity and Western values back to Javier Milei's Argentina. Afuera! He says the age of socialist caudillo is over. Francisco, welcome.
Hi, Austin. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This interview is a long time coming, Francisco. We have a mutual friend, my best friend, Vince, who we just spent some time together in the holidays. He's a bro, and he's been telling you that we needed to talk for a long time. I have obviously been following what's been going on in Argentina very closely on this show. So I'm glad to welcome you here. Francisco, welcome.
Thanks. And I won't hold Vince against you.
So somebody said to me on Twitter the other day that the reason why Javier Milei of Argentina the most libertarian president who's ever been elected, the reason why he supported the raid to grab Maduro is because he has no skin in the game. Is it true, Francisco, that Javier Milei of Argentina has no skin in the game when it comes to Venezuela?
Well, no, not at all. What can I say? Even I have skin in the game when it comes to Venezuela. Every single Latin American has skin in the game. It's important to understand what Venezuela was acting as before we go into the black and whites of the actual raid. So Venezuela had become a socialist hub where China, Russia, Iran, but most of all, Cuba was influencing Latin America from. And this is well documented. Like, if you go into the actual casualty list of the raid, the only official list of deaths are 32 Cuban militaries. From an American attack on Venezuelan soil, the only actual casualties are Cuban. So that tells you a lot about what the military influence of Cuba is in Venezuela. And that spreads all over Latin America. You have Sheinbaum in Mexico, who is a socialist communist. You have Petro, who is a communist, let's call him a guerrilla warrior instead of calling him a terrorist like some people do. And then you have in Brazil, you have Lula, who is socialist and has given free reins to communist elements in his government. And Chile just had elections where a communist was deposed democratically, although he wasn't, in his defense, he wasn't the violent communist that we are seeing in Venezuela, but still he was someone who was pushing for an agenda that goes to the very left of Latin America. So to understand what was going on in Latin America until not too long, before Milei came in, before the Maduro raid, you need to understand what has been going on for the past 30 years. A book that I would recommend, not because it's good, because I personally don't think it's good at all, is The Open Veins of Latin America, Las Venas Abiertas de América Latina, by Fernando Galeano. So that has been used sort of as the Bible of teenage socialism that should inspire everyone. When Galeano himself has said a couple of years ago that he shouldn't have written that book, that he doesn't agree with anything that he wrote in there, that he doesn't regret it, but he doesn't agree with it. So that tells you a lot about what has been going on, ideologically, at least, in Latin America. Now, I was listening to the judge saying that There's no documentation about sex trafficking, that narco-terrorism is not a legal term, and I couldn't disagree more. It might not be something that is in U.S. courts, but is well documented. It is a legal term here in Argentina and in most of Latin American countries. Sex trafficking is flagrant. And we in Argentina, we are a population of 44 million people. We have over 250,000 Venezuelans who are refugees of that regime. And they can tell you themselves all the things that are going on. And sex trafficking is going on in Venezuela the same way that it's going on in Colombia, the same way that it's going in Mexico, and the same way that it's going on in Cuba. If you don't fight it, if you have the ideology of pushing for sex with underage kids, that's going to lead to sex trafficking. That is sex trafficking on itself. And a great example of that is what Bukele did in El Salvador. They started tracking foreigners that came in for very specific periods of time, and they have cut sex trafficking for underage children for more than half. So there is a lot of that going on in Latin America. Now, I've been hearing a lot of Trump violated
the
international
sovereignty.
law.
He violated their sovereignty and international law is what they'll say, yes.
Well, I can tell you 100% that they violated Venezuelan sovereignty, but so did Maduro, because he wasn't the president, or at least not the democratic president. He was a dictator who just didn't like the last elections where Edmundo Gonzalez was voted president, and he just said, nope, not giving over the presidency to anyone. And prior to that, people might forget, but Juan Guaidó was elected president. And not only did they not recognize the results of the election, but they actually sent out the military and killed a whole bunch of people.
I saw the videos. And I was trying to explain that to the judge. This is a man who rolled armored personnel carriers over the top of his own citizens. I saw a video of them assassinating a citizen in the street, just police officers just murdering him right there. But you know, your group, La Carlos Menem, explicitly advocates for aligning with the West and rejecting the Foro de Sao Paulo socialism. So is sovereignty just the shield that these dictators use to hide their crimes?
Well, absolutely. There was a president of Uruguay. He was very well liked. He was very well known, called Mujica. So when they asked Mujica about what was going on with the tanks in Venezuela, he said, well, you shouldn't stand in front of a tank. That's what the very democratic left thinks about whatever protest you have against the left. So going back to La Carlos Menem, there's a reason why we called it La Carlos Menem. Carlos Menem was the president of Argentina during the 90s. He inherited a country that was torn in half between the terrorist left and the dictatorial right. There were horrible abuses from both sides. And when I say abuses, I like to call them war crimes because that's what they were. But in Argentina, we call them abuses for some reason. We don't want to call terrorists, but we are fine calling the dictatorial right a dictatorship. So Carlos Menem said, no country is going to heal from hate. So he forgave both sides. He indulted both sides. He pardoned everyone that was involved. He aligned Argentina with the West, especially with the US. There's a video that I sent you that I don't know if there's any other Latin American president that did that, but he entered the Capitol to give a speech, and he had the whole crowd, absolutely everyone, on their feet cheering for him. And that explains to you what he was as a phenomenon on Latin America. And from there, we saw the modernization of Argentina, the pacification of Argentina, and the alignment with Western values. Now, after he left government, and he didn't do a good job when he left government by bringing, a good political heritage. He didn't have someone to follow up his project. And we started having all these left-oriented politicians who sent Argentina to the socialist side. Now, with Milei, that completely changed, and nobody took him seriously. There was this crazy guy with the crazy hair waving a chainsaw saying, you have to cut everything in half. Everything that doesn't work outside, afuera. And it works. Inflation, that was our biggest concern, has almost vanished as a problem. We still have a very strong economic issue because there's not enough private jobs, because the economy is still in recession. But when you look at where we were and where we're going, at what pace, it's amazing. And the reason why we called it La Carlos Menem is because Carlos Menem had something that Milei doesn't, which is a political seduction, a political allure ability that Milei doesn't have. He's a more of a crash the system kind of guy. He's not interested in political games. That's for sure.
Yeah, don't get me too excited there, Francisco. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm your host, Austin Petersen. We are the Javier Milei friendly American live streaming podcast, North American, United States American. But we recognize that there is a South America, and that those issues that happen south of our border, they make their way and migrate their way north of the border. So that's why I do spend perhaps an inordinate amount of time as an American, United States American, focusing on Latin American issues. Francisco, we're launching a new podcast on our network called Cafecito Libre. And it'll be hosted by a Cuban expat who made her way to the United States, became an American citizen. So we're really excited about the opportunity to share ideas more than anything. Trust me, I want to sell my shoes to Argentina, my Javier Milei Afuera sneakers. But a little known fact is that they're too broke to buy them. That country, unfortunately, is so economically behind that they don't have the disposable income to buy goods and services that are like the more novelty things that you might get from forlibertyshop.com, perhaps. I do have some necessities, which is my coffee, but I know Venezuela doesn't have a problem with coffee. And besides, they're drinking yerba mate anyway, but I digress. Don't touch the bombilla. Now.
Don't touch the bombilla.
Don't touch the bombilla. We have a shirt in the shop that says, no touch the bombilla, like don't tread on me.
Well, that's exactly right. Has Vince have you over for mate?
No, you know what? That son of a bitch has never invited me over for yerba mate.
I set him up with everything, with whole mate kit. I told him how to brew it, what's the right temperature for it, and what not to do.
That Italian that soprano, that sausage eating, spaghetti licking son of a. We'll have a conversation with Vince. I hope he's watching. Francisco, we're delighted to have you on the Wake Up America show. We cover these Latin American issues. What I'm trying to say is we cover these Latin American issues, and we're very, very tight with Milei on this show. And what I need to understand, though, Francisco, is Javier Milei, and I'm not sure how familiar. Has Vince ever told you about his crazy libertarian ideas? Are you familiar with
some of them?
Okay, so you're not familiar with like the crazy. Your eyes widened a bit when I told you about anarcho-tyranny that I discussed with the judge about this. But essentially, Milei is a libertarian, right? Libertarians Correct. In the United States, we have this conflict going on. Libertarians in the United States tend to be isolationist. They tend to be very against any foreign intervention, and they don't like foreign countries. They don't like anything foreign, and it's globalism. They're very, very kind of like, insular. And so this act is deemed by many American libertarians as a war crime and a terrible thing. The judge came on, made all those arguments. Javier Milei does not make those arguments. If you had to guess, I mean, if you don't know our philosophy by every jot and tittle, I can understand that. It's we're very autistic about it. But why do you think Milei, as a philosophical libertarian, as a self-described anarcho-capitalist, would support the toppling of Maduro if American libertarians, by and large, don't support it? Why, and see it as a violation of libertarian principles? Why would Milei support it and the American libertarians not, in your mind?
Well, there's a pragmatic vision of all of this that you need to take into account. At some point, you need to say, you know what? Sure. And I don't even know if it was illegal, but let's say that what Trump did was illegal. As an Argentinian, knowing that I won't have a terrorist cell running one of the richest countries in the world that is already influencing Latin America and also the US, attacking my country, attacking my citizens, attacking my fellow countrymen, I'm all for it. And there's a very simple reason. We talk about international law. There are only two laws that could apply internationally to Trump. One is the UN Charter, of which the US has a veto vote. So it honestly doesn't really make any sense what the UN says. The US is just going to veto whatever resolution they bring up. The other one is The Hague and the International Criminal Court, of which the US is not a signatory. So there's really no international law that is applying to whatever the US does there. And if you go into the real politic of it all, the UN doesn't really do anything. The whole
of course
world
they don't.
right now.
Yeah, you're speaking to the choir.
The whole
You're
world right
speaking to
now
the
is
choir,
right.
Francisco.
It's proof of it. I mean, there's no international law that applies to a country that has the military or the economic resources to say, I don't care about what you say.
Well, that's
And
the
the
globalism.
organization-
That's the globalism, right? So when libertarians in the United States complain about globalism, that's the globalism, right? The problem is that too many people confuse that with international free trade, which is what we're trying to get to with Argentina, which we love to see. But I want to ask you, because I don't have a lot of time, I apologize, I have to keep this moving. I want to ask you about the Yankee imperialism slur, right? Francisco, you know the history. Every time the United States touches South America, the media yells, Operation Condor, CIA coup, every libertarian is saying. So you're a young guy, you lead a youth movement. So does your generation still buy the Yankee imperialism narrative, or do they look at the United States and say, please come help us do business?
Oh, 100% my generation buys the whole imperialism, Yankees go home ideology. And here's the thing.
Where's my sad trombone effect?
I'm going to tell you the origins of that in Argentina. Back when Perón was trying to be president for the first time, he was an anti-establishment candidate. So the whole establishment was saying, this guy is dangerous for what we have going on. And the U.S. ambassador to Argentina, Braden, sided with the establishment back then, just because it was the establishment. So the slogan became Braden or Perón. So that has been going on for over 70 years. Now, the Peronist movement, and it's important to understand that it's a movement because you can find Peronists that are far right, far left, and everything in between. It's not a party anymore. Don't really have a new project, so they have these very old slogans. So you will find communists that literally went guerrilla on Perón, saying, Braden or Perón, gringos go home. When Perón himself tried to get into good graces with the US when he evolved into his government. Now, the only way of actually removing that sentiment is when we reach economic growth again, the way that we're supposed to, and we have economic comfort, we just don't relax on the ideological agenda, because that's something that we have done. And that's something that the US has done. I like to think that everything that's going on, for example, for transgenders, for white guilt, and all of that that's going on in the US, honestly, it's because you guys are bored. When you don't have real issues, you start thinking about, well, should I be white? Should I have been born? It is true. I mean,
it's true. We're bored. We're bored out of our minds. This is why we let these white, liberal, affluent females come into New York, places like New York City, and do things like, we're going to take the property from the tenants because we're so bored. We just want to see her try and do it. That's what's sad.
I mean, it's funny to see, and I don't want to get involved in foreign politics because that's something that it's bad manners. But when I lived there, I used to see all these people that were.
We're Americans. We don't care.
I used to live in Florida.
We're up in your shit.
I kept seeing all these people who were talking to me about immigration issues, and I was like, "What do you know about immigration and socialism? You've been, worrying about nonsense and getting everything on, rent, leasing, just mortgages, whatever, nothing that you actually had to go out and get for your own. You have a system that works for you. We have a system that works against us. We understand socialism. You are the ones that don't understand it. And I completely forgot to say all opinions are my own. You're not being paid by Javier Milei. Didn't pay you to come and do this interview.
Right. And our friend Vince does not pay either one of us, to my knowledge. Francisco,
but
I want to talk.
That's the thing. The lack of real issues promotes just the creation of imaginary issues.
Right. Well, we do have real issues. Thank you for that. That's true. We do have real issues, and that is China, the China connection. So one of the reasons Trump went in allegedly was the Iranian and Chinese presence in Caracas. Right. We know China has been buying up infrastructure all over your continent. So was removing Maduro a necessary move to stop China from owning South America? Or is that just American paranoia?
That's a broad overstatement. So China has been buying infrastructure all over the world. And unlike the US, China doesn't have an FCPA, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, in which they don't do business in corrupt countries. They really don't care. Like, nobody's going to go to jail in China because they went into Venezuela and they had to deal with whatever mayor, just do whatever you want, just let us get your oil. The US does have that. If everyone that should be processed and that should be arraigned and charged because breaking that law is processed, that's a completely different aspect. But the US does have that. Now, Venezuela was not only acting as a hub for China. Venezuela was also acting as a very important factor for the Ukraine war. You have Putin right now. He had a deal with China that Russia and China have been historical enemies and rivals, but they understood that they needed to get a deal because China needs oil and gas. Russia doesn't have anyone to sell with all the sanctions, and he was getting money out of China to sell the oil and gas. And he was also threatening Europe with the gas shortages. And if you ask any European, they do have energy shortages that they directly attributed to the Ukraine war. What Trump did right now is securing the price of oil and the flow of oil and gas to all the world. Now, there's no philanthropy here. I completely understand that, and I agree with that. And I don't like foreign interventions, but we're analyzing what actually happened. Now, Russia doesn't have that trump card, pun intended, to mess with the oil markets or the gas markets or survive the sanctions of the West. What you're going to see now also is the complete annihilation of the BRICS. The BRICS is the economic group created by Brazil, Russia, India, and China. India doesn't really have one preference over the other. India is an India-first country. So they don't really care who sells oil and gas to them. That has just tipped the balance in favor of the West, with the US controlling the flow of oil and gas out of Venezuela. And it's not like Venezuela was selling what it had, because their production facilities are completely destroyed. They also have extra crude oil, which means that you need special facilities to process that oil. And the main reach that they have is in coltan and other rare minerals. So it's way more than China what it's being weighed right now in Venezuela. You are seeing the West going back into the West to set their own yard in order, and that way putting a lot of moving parts otherwhere in the world into order.
Francisco, I have to cut you off, unfortunately, because we're running out of time today. This has been a great interview, and we're thankful to have your time today. Congratulations on the success of Argentina. Viva la libertad, carajo. I am so thrilled.
Viva la libertad, carajo.
I'm so thrilled to see what Argentina is doing, because to you, it may be a man who's just shut everything down and this is how it's going to be. To me, it is the culmination of my decades-long work to inspire the world with the ideas that Javier Milei is actually bringing into fruition. I have run for office twice unsuccessfully. I have stood in subways like a crazy street preacher reading books from Ron Paul to people in the subways in New York City. I kid you not. I'm a crazy man for these ideas. So seeing
Vince has told me a little bit about that. So yeah.
Argentina, seeing them adopt these ideas in the real world, it has done something very special. It has taken the ideas, the theories that I've espoused, and putting them into actuality. So again, congratulations and thank you for leading the way, Argentina. And anything else that you want to share, Francisco, really quickly, or plug, if you want to plug your X account or anything before we go?
I just want to thank you for having us on the show. You can find us on Instagram and X as La Carlos Menem Low Dash. And more important than anything, let's make taxation theft again, because I saw your taxation is theft. It's not theft here. Let's make it theft again, and keep preaching the good word. Well, this is so important for everyone to get involved.
Thank you. We might have to steal a few communists in order to pass those laws. Francisco, have a great day, and Happy New Year.
You too, man.
Happy New Year. That was Francisco Moran from Argentina. He's a leader of a youth movement, and I'm really thankful to have a friend like Vince to connect us with that. Hey, Vince. You spaghetti-eating, non-inviting me over for yerba mate, mother. Love you guys. And thanks so much for watching the Wake Up America show today. We don't have a whole lot of time, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to play the Great Grift Off because we unlocked all 3 phases of the bonus content, and I still have to do my show and tell. So we're going to do the Great Grift Off as instead of a full like trivia game, we're going to do a raffle. What do you say? I just have to find the Great Grift Off scene and bring it up into your browser. There we go. Hit it. There you go. Go to crowdparty.app. That's crowdparty.app. We're going to play a game real quick, and then we're going to do a little show and tell. Crowdparty.app, and enter in that code 92462. That's 92462. Go to crowdparty.app. We're going to have a quick little raffle, little giveaway, little prize drawing. 92462 at crowdparty.app. That's crowdparty.app. Crowdparty.app. 92462. Enter in that code. We're going to play a game together. In just a few moments, I'm going to click the 30-second countdown button because I got to go fast. Got to try and keep the show on time today. We still have a show and tell to go. Log in at crowdparty.app. Go to the website, crowdparty.app. Type in that code. If you're watching us live right now, you have a chance to win a real prize from the Grift Shop. That's 92462. Go to crowdparty.app. That's crowdparty.app. Crowdparty.app, 92462. We're going to give away a nice big prize today for the first place winner. First prize today, 92462. First prize winner for this is going to be an AK-47. 92462. Giving away an AK-47 today. If you go to crowdparty.app, you could win. Let's get as many people in the raffle as we can. In just a moment, I'm going to hit a countdown. We're going to have a 30-second button. That's the 30-second button. You've got 30 seconds to get your booty on the floor tonight and go to crowdparty.app and join the raffle. Type in that code number you see on your screen, 92462. That's 92462. First place winner today is going to win an AK-47. I'm not kidding. Log in. Play the game. 5 seconds. Here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start and let's play. Get ready. Who will be the lucky winner? 15 seconds counting down. First place winner is going to win an AK-47. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Who's the winner? Amy. Amy, Here's how you collect your prize. Congratulations, Amy. Here's how you collect your prize. Send us a text at that phone number on the bottom of the screen, 573-319-1586. Say, hey, it's me, Amy Easley, Amy E, and we use that to keep track of everything. So send us that text to collect your prize, Amy, and we will send you a real AK-47 in the mail. You'll be getting that. Thankfully, we both live in Missouri where the gun laws are not strict. I have an AK-47. I have two AK-47s. Actually, I have a lot of AK-47s. I don't have any AK-47s. So what am I saying? They're at the bottom of the Ozark River. They're bottom of the Niangua. Keep an eye out for it. We got an AK-47 coming your way. Amy Easley in the mail. Have a wonderful day. Okay. Some of you know what this is. Some of you don't know what this is. Let's have a little show and tell. Last year, I took a trip to Washington, D.C. We called it the AP for DC Liberty Tour, and we had an absolute blast, except for one little incident when I went to the Smithsonian Museum of American History. And in order to lead the tour group around, I used this American flag to show people which direction we're going. Amy knows, she was there. Quest was there. Will you be at the next one? Where's it going to be? Well, you'll see very soon. This flag right here, I'm directing the tour group, walking through the halls, and then all of a sudden a guard comes up and stops me and tells me I have to furl this flag. They said furl the flag and put it away because, you know why? Because it might be offensive. I kid you not. That is a real story. I have witnesses. At the Smithsonian Museum for American History, the American flag had to be put away because they said it might be offensive. We called the White House. We got the White House on the phone. A month later, or like maybe even it was even 2 weeks later, the White House announced that they're cleaning up the Smithsonian. I kid you not. This little flag. Hold on to your flags, folks. America, the last libertarian nation on earth. Last stand for liberty, and maybe Greenland soon. We'll be seeing you guys tomorrow. Don't forget to watch Culturama. Watch Liberty Tonight at 7 p.m. tonight. Brian Piotr is live. Rumble.com/Liberty Tonight. I hope you're enjoying these shows. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for unlocking the bonus content, guys. Keeping us fed, keeping our freedom family strong. I'm so grateful and thankful. People like Mighty Megatron, people like Amy J. Easley, people like Quest Fanning, Drew Van Runkle. You make it happen. And we couldn't do it without Derek Mollier and Melly B. Thank you, Joni Rankin. Thank you, guys. You're amazing. Love you. See you tomorrow.
Marjorie Taylor Greene went from QAnon, acolyte to MAGA exile. You don't need a detailed theory to explain the departing Congresswoman's journey. Pundits have offered elaborate explanations for the evolving views of Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Georgia Republican whose resignation from Congress takes effect today. But I don't think you need a detailed theory to explain this woman's journey from QAnon acolyte to MAGA exile. You just need to recognize one central fact about her. She actually believes things. Some of the things she's believed are absurd, but that's secondary. She has beliefs, and she's willing, not always, but more often than the average DC Paul, to put those beliefs ahead of other considerations. You could already catch a hint of this during Greene's original 2020 Czar 20 congressional campaign. Back then, she attracted national attention for her past interest in QAnon, a tapestry of conspiracy theories in which President Donald Trump was supposedly secretly working with special counsel Robert Mueller to defeat a cabal of elite satanic pedophiles who consume children's blood. In those days, articles about Greene frequently linked her to another Q-friendly figure, the Colorado congressional candidate Lauren Boebert, who entered the House at the same time as Greene and eventually had a contentious falling out with her. Greene was booted from the Freedom Caucus after she reportedly called Boebert a little bitch. But even in 2020, anyone paying close attention could have seen an important difference between the two candidates. Greene had actually embraced the Q worldview, though she insisted that she had come to reject it. Boebert, asked about QAnon on the conspiracist show Steel Truth, had replied by saying she hoped that this is real, a statement delicately phrased to appeal to the Q-ish voting bloc without committing her to its worldview. Boebert was playing a cynical political game. Green, for better or for worse, was a believer. Not just a believer, a particular kind of believer. Most Americans don't spend their lives soaking up the dogmas of the two big parties' competing fan bases. To the extent that they pay attention to politics, they often adopt their views piecemeal, mixing opinions from the left and the right, and sometimes from strange folks on the fringes. So you might be, say, an affluent woman in an Atlanta suburb, founder of a CrossFit gym, who rarely reads the op-ed pages of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, but scrolls frequently through Facebook, absorbing rumors that the typical Times or Journal reader might regard as nuts. That was Green, part normie and part weird. Weird, in fact, because she was so normal. The most infamous idea Green expressed in her pre-congressional days came in 2018, when she wrote a Facebook post blaming that year's California wildfires on space lasers controlled by the Rothschild banking family. The Rothschilds play a starring role in many anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, so when Green's post resurfaced in 2021, many people concluded the Congresswoman was not merely loopy, but an anti-Semite. Green responded that she simply hadn't known that the Rothschilds are Jewish. Maybe she really didn't know, or maybe that was a lie. But if any congressperson could plausibly claim such naivete, it would be Green. This wasn't the Rothschild tale of someone who grew up surrounded by anti-Jewish folklore. It was the Rothschild tale of someone surrounded by folklore that had fallen out of its original context and floated like driftwood in a digital sea. Sometimes someone with that sort of background comes to Washington, gets acclimated, and drops those early influences like a striver carefully eliminating every trace of his hometown's accent. But Green didn't. She kept believing things, and that led to trouble with her party. Even during Donald Trump's first stint in the White House, you could see a simmering tension between two types of MAGA, the kind that was basically just pro-Trump and a wilder, woollier bundle of Trump-era currents on the populist right. One way to tell the difference, check whether someone's skepticism about the national security state disappears when the three-letter agencies pursue people not named Trump. Green was, along with Florida's Matt Gaetz, the most notable Republican from the second group to have made it to Congress. Their views did not always track with the party line, particularly when it came to foreign policy. Green once joined Democratic Representative Rashida Tlaib, a self-described socialist from Michigan, in signing a letter asking the government to drop the prosecution of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. And she did it the very same week she joined a Republican push to censure Tlaib for some comments about Israel. Despite those differences, the two MAGAs were largely united on the question of whether to support Donald Trump. But there was not, in principle, any reason why backbenchers making trouble for Republican congressional leaders wouldn't someday start making trouble for a Republican president too, especially as Trump grew less popular. And in 2025, Green, until then one of Trump's most loyal soldiers, started directly criticizing the White House. Trump insisted that this was because he refused to get behind Green's ambition to leap from the House to the Senate, and I wouldn't be surprised if that played a role in their split. But there was also that not-so-small matter of her beliefs. Both Green and Trump had talked about being anti-war, for example, but she actually believed what she was saying, and so she was put off when she realized Trump was governing as a hawk. This past weekend, she denounced Trump's Venezuela raid, calling it what many in MAGA thought they voted to end. There were differences on economic policy too, and above all, there was the question of the Epstein files. Remember, Green used to believe that Trump was waging a secret war against elite pedophiles. Jeffrey Epstein, the money man who died while awaiting trial on charges of sex trafficking minors, is widely seen, not merely by Q-types but by mainstream reporters and politicians, as the man at the center of a ruling class pedophile ring. So when Trump proved reluctant to release the full files on the Epstein case, Green regarded it as a betrayal. Epstein was everything, she told the New York Times. After that, things went south quickly. Trump called his critic Marjorie Trader Green. Green started bringing her criticisms of the president to such non-conservative spots as 60 Minutes, Real Time, and that hotbed of liberal feminism, The View. That last stop surprised some people, but many of Green's criticisms of Republican leaders have had a somewhat feminist hue. She's a businesswoman born the year Free to Be, You and Me was released. She didn't experience the pre-feminist era and has never shown any signs of wanting to restore it. The conflict came to a head in November, when Green announced her pending retirement from Congress in a statement full of anger at the highest echelons of the corporate state. "There is no plan to save the world or insane 4D chess game being played," she declared, a direct repudiation of the QAnon faith, which had instructed believers to trust Trump's hidden plan. Needless to say, the mere fact of having beliefs does not mean those beliefs are always good. Green took several positions I liked. I'm always glad when Washington's tiny anti-war faction gets more support. Often, she took positions I disliked. She introduced, and the House recently passed, an anti-trans bill so extreme that it would criminalize the provision of puberty blockers to transgender minors. I doubt that many people, even among her most fervent fans, agreed with everything Green said or did. She had the patchwork belief system of someone who thinks for herself. And if she didn't always think those beliefs through as thoroughly as she should have, well, that just magnified the effect. Green claims she doesn't have further political plans, and perhaps she doesn't, at least for now. But she hasn't stopped posting commentary. Lately, she's been issuing libertarian-flavored calls for a tax strike, and she'll surely seek ways to stay in the public eye. Maybe she'll be running a podcast, or maybe she'll be running for president. She doesn't just have beliefs. She likes to give them a platform, and I doubt she'll settle for heading back to Facebook.